Who will win the AFC North? Will there be surprises? There will definitely be disappointments in the AFC North. All that and more. My official AFC North preview and record prediction for every single team in the AFC North, giving you my thoughts, my in-depth analysis on each of the AFC North teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Cleveland Browns, going through their strengths, their weaknesses, their depth charts on offense and defense, breaking down what I believe will become of their seasons. Will they reach expectations? Which one of these teams has a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl? Is there a dark horse contender in this division? And will all of these teams make the playoffs? This might be, in my opinion, the strongest division in football. I just did a very strong division in the AFC East, and I think the AFC North might be even better. So if that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe for more NFL division previews live on the Bottom Line View. Let's go. Let's begin our AFC North preview by first just saying hello to some people in the chat. I just want to say hello to Big Al, who's always first in the chat. He's always here. He's always repping the BLV. He says, spike the like button and subscribe. Don't forget to become a member, become a patron, join the Discord, and follow Mitch on the social media. Yeah, guys, quick shout out to the Patreon and the YouTube membership. If you guys are looking to support me and what I'm doing here on the channel, the best way to do that is to become a patron or a YouTube member. Okay, the AFC North is here, going through each of the 4 teams and their records and the predictions for their season. So let me know in the comments what you guys think, who you think's going to win the division, if you think there's going to be multiple playoff teams, and what you guys think overall for each team, their record, and so on. So make sure to leave a comment in the comment section below, or even live. I will take that and I'll accept that as well. Let's move to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers going to be the first team we preview here for the AFC North. The Pittsburgh Steelers' expectations this season, I feel like, are ramped up from last year. Last year, everyone just wanted Pittsburgh to be competitive. With a rookie quarterback in Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, one of their, I believe, second-round talents, another wide receiver that it looks like they've hit on. And last season, they lost TJ Watt. Some unfortunate things happened. Early in the year, they looked like they were having the first losing season in Mike Tomlin's tenure. But as the Pittsburgh Steelers typically do, they do not give up, they do not back down, and they do not accept defeat. And they were able to rise. They were able to build and get better and better and better and play their best football near the end of the season, take advantage of some other teams, and upset a lot of teams, and actually eventually have a winning record somehow, some way. Will they be able to do that this year? Well, the expectation this year in Pittsburgh is to make the playoffs, I would say. I think the expectation for a lot of their fans is to improve on last season, which may be fair, it may not be fair, right? Pittsburgh, I think, is looked at as the 4th most talented team in this division, probably the 4th place team in this division by most experts out there, but it's a team that you cannot deny. And I think there's a lot of people that are excited for this team. And I would say I have ramped up my excitement for this team as we've watched them in the preseason. I feel like Kenny Pickett has looked really crisp, really good, and really improved from his rookie season in the preseason. I think George Pickens looks the part. Deontay Johnson looks motivated. The offense overall looks better. Jaylen Warren, we're going to get to him. He could have a big year. The defense looks as advertised. So this is a team that, with Mike Tomlin coaching it, with the culture they have, with the history they have, this is a team you cannot doubt, that you cannot disrespect, and that you cannot take lightly. So let's take a look at their strengths and their weaknesses for this upcoming season. These are the rankings of what I had for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. At quarterback, I ranked Kenny Pickett 24th. He was kind of in that weird range of players that I wasn't exactly sure where to put Kenny Pickett because he only played so many games as a rookie and his stats weren't very impressive. But in other moments, you saw him like in 2-minute situations at the end of games just continuously come up clutch and make plays. So Kenny Pickett is somebody that could very much rise in his ranking this year. I could see him being a top 20 quarterback this season, but entering the year, I thought it was only fair to place him in that kind of I'm not quite sure yet type of tier. The coach rank, I got Mike Tomlin at number 6. Steeler fans are probably a little bit upset about that. They probably think he should be a bit higher than number 6. But, I mean, it is what it is. I feel like Mike Tomlin is a great coach. There's a lot of great coaches in this league. The one thing I would say about Mike Tomlin is he has not had playoff success in quite some time. I don't think he has won a playoff game since 2016. Could be wrong about that exact date, but that's a long time to go without a playoff win. So for a great coach, to be an elite coach, you have to have recent success, to have somewhat recent success. And Tomlin has been consistent. He is a great motivator, a great leader of men. And I really respect his history and his consistency. But to be an elite top 5 coach, you need to have those victories in the playoffs. Offensive line rank, I think they're pretty average. I actually think they might be better than that, though. You know, I ranked the offensive lines, I think, in July or June. But since watching them in the preseason, I think I've been impressed, you know, overall, watching a lot of these guys. The interesting thing will be, will the rookie left tackle Jones end up starting this season? Or will he not factor in until year 2? Or maybe until an injury happens? I think the guard play is really good with Daniels and Samalu, who they signed from Philadelphia this year. I think those two guys could lead the way on the ground and really open things up for the running game that's really suffered in recent years. At number 23 overall, I have the offense. I think a lot of this has to do with Matt Canada. Matt Canada, the offensive play caller, is just not a good one. I think a lot of people would say he's the worst play caller in football. I think they have a lot of skill talent. Not one of the best skill groups in the NFL, but definitely enough to get by and enough to win a lot of games. You have Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Najee and Jalen Warren in the backfield. You have Pat at tight end. You add Allen Robinson. So they have a fair amount of skill talent. It just comes down to, can that offensive coordinator get the most out of these guys, and can the quarterback hit those guys when he needs to? The roster was number 20. And that felt low when I ranked it. But again, guys, I did that purely on the math of how I evaluated each player. But yeah, it was surprising to see the Steelers at number 20. I think that speaks to the fact that they have a lot of young players, a lot of guys that are unproven, and we need more time to determine how talented they are. They could really break out this year. The secondary rank I have at number 24. I think this is the biggest question mark about the team besides the play calling overall. I think it's the secondary. Which corners are going to step up? Is Patrick Peterson still that dude? Can he be the number 1 this year? Will Joey Porter Jr. step up as a rookie and be a guy? Who will be their number 1 corner, and how will they cover in the back end, really? And then the defensive line, we always know, is very good, led by TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward. Alex Highsmith is an extremely underrated and overlooked player. That is a very good defensive line. Defense rank, they're definitely going to be one of the best in football. It's a matter of how good they will be, not if they will be good, in my opinion. So those are the ranks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of those ranks. I think strengths are definitely the defensive line, the defensive front, their ability to rush the passer, get to the quarterback, stop the run. And their weaknesses, I would say, are the offensive line, or can they figure that out? The play calling overall, and then the secondary. Okay, moving to the offensive depth chart for the team. You got Kenny Pickett at quarterback, Harris and Warren in the backfield, Pickens, Johnson, and Robinson at wide receiver. You also have Calvin Austin. Don't forget about him. He's a returner, but I liked him coming out of the draft last year. He's a little, small, quick guy that can separate and get open over the middle of the field and potentially vertically as well. He can be a little bit of a trick player. You can use him in some run game concepts, a lot of motion, screen game, even to just get a burner on the field, because this receiving core is a little slow. I would say that. Pickens doesn't exactly have vertical speed. Deontay Johnson is quick. He's not exactly fast, but he's very, very quick. and he does get open. And Allen Robinson is definitely slow, and Pat isn't the fastest tight end in the world. Moore is projected to be the left tackle. That was a question mark for me, but that's what our lads currently has as their left tackle. Seumalo is a beast. Cole had a good season last year, probably the best of his career. We'll see if he could continue that success. Daniels has been their best lineman the last year or so. And the right tackle position, I would say the tackle positions are a lot weaker than the interior. So if they can get more out of that position, that would be nice. But Kenny Pickett is the big question mark. Can Kenny Pickett be that guy? Can he be a franchise quarterback? Can he make the plays, the throws? Can he win with his mind? The thing I really like about Kenny Pickett is his gamer approach to football. He is very good at making the subtle movements in the pocket and inside and outside of the pocket to extend plays and make throws here and there. He's also just very tough. He has a good feel for the pocket, taking hits to make a throw. Never seems to back down and never seems to have a situation that's too big for him. So I really like Kenny Pickett from that attitude standpoint. On the defensive side of the football, we got Cameron Hayward and Ogunjobi in the inside. Ogunjobi comes back once again for this team. I think he's been pretty good there. TJ Watt and Highsmith are one of the most dominant duos on the edge in the NFL. And I also love that they picked up Marcus Golden, a edge defender, a depth edge defender for this football team, that if TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith miss any time, Marcus Golden has proven in his career with Arizona, with the Giants, that he can get to the quarterback, he can make plays. Sullivan is projected to be the nickel corner, although that would be a big, I think, decline from recent nickel play in Pittsburgh. Sullivan was not very good last year for Minnesota. He's been at least, at the best average in Green Bay. So he's not somebody I would really rely on in that position, but they can mix in a bunch of guys. They have 4 or 5 corners that can play. It's a matter of, okay, how much are they going to play and how good are they going to be? Levi Wallace is a veteran, signed with them a couple years back. He's been solid overall. He knows how to play in this system. They like to play a lot of zone, but they've been mixing in more man recently. Patrick Peterson is going to be their CB1, you would think. Had a great year last year, really a resurgence, interceptions all over the place for Minnesota. Can he bring that playmaking ability to Pittsburgh? Holcomb and Roberts, I would say, is the weakness of the defense overall. This is not a strong linebacker position. Holcomb is a decent overall linebacker with really no strengths or no weaknesses. He's just kind of solid. He's a smart player. Landon Roberts is much more of a hammer. Trust me, I know him well. He's a former Patriot. He is a great run defender, but he does struggle in space to move and to cover. So that's going to be a problem for the Steelers. He is a situational player, in my opinion. Holcomb will play the most snaps if it was me running the defense. DeMonte KZ has been kind of a journeyman as of late, but he was really good last year for Pittsburgh in the snaps that he did play. He's expected to play alongside Minkah Fitzpatrick. Arguably the best safety in football, can play free safety, strong safety, in the box, make plays against the run and the pass. He's great at reacting to the football. So this defense, I think it has more depth in the secondary than in recent history, but the question is, they don't have a Cam Sutton or a Mike Hilton like they used to have the last couple of years, where they really have one rock solid corner. I mean, maybe that's going to be Patrick Peterson for them, but he's so old, it's hard to determine that. But I think the defensive front is going to bring them a lot of success as long as they stay healthy. So overall, that's the offense, that's the defense. I expect the defense to be stronger than the offense, but I do think the offense will be better than last year. My only question about the offense is, how good is Kenny Pickett? And can Matt Canada maximize the talent? And I'm not quite sure. So my overall projection for the Pittsburgh Steelers is 9-8. I have them going 9-8 right now. I really wanted to push this to 10-7. And honestly, there's 2 teams in this division that I feel like are very level. And it's for different reasons. I think the other team I'll talk about probably has more talent, but they don't have the pride and the consistency that the Pittsburgh Steelers show each and every season. So I could easily see the Steelers making the playoffs this year. 9-8 might be able to get it done, but in a super competitive AFC, I see them just outside of the playoffs. I have 5 teams in the AFC. I want to say 4 or 5 teams in the AFC finishing 9-8, just outside of the playoffs. This is going to be an extremely competitive AFC wildcard race. I have their ceiling being 11-6. They have a good defense. Pickett plays like a baller. The offense figures it out. And they have a similar season to they did a couple years ago with Ben. I feel like if I knew what Pickett was and I felt like he was closer to a Ben Roethlisberger, I would have this team at probably 11-6-ish. But the question is, with a middling quarterback, do they have enough around this quarterback, especially from a play calling standpoint, to elevate the quarterback? And then the floor for me is 6-11. I know that sounds outrageous for Steelers fans because they haven't had a losing season under Tomlin. But I think a realistic scenario could be this is just an extremely tough conference, an extremely tough division. One team has to have a down year. Maybe Pickett doesn't live up to the hype. Potentially their receiving core does not play to the level we expect. The offensive line is still a mess. The defense sees injuries like it did last year. TJ Watt doesn't play the full season, which I feel like is realistic. And they just have a bad year, and that could happen. But overall, I have the projection. The bet in terms of over-under, I did say was one of my least confident. I don't know about this one. I could see them winning 10. I could see them winning 8. I could see them winning 9. I think 9 is a perfect number for the Steelers. That's why I have them at 9 and 8. That is my Pittsburgh Steelers preview and my thoughts on the Steelers. Let me know your thoughts, your prediction, your projection for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2023. I think they'll be a good team. I just don't know if they have enough in this AFC to make the playoffs. Okay, moving to the next team, the Baltimore Ravens. And guys, if you haven't already, make sure you Gronk spike the like button. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. And let's get to the Ravens. So the Ravens made the playoffs last year, and I feel like a lot of people forget that they made the playoffs last year, honestly. I feel like they're a team that a lot of people forget made the playoffs. They didn't have Lamar Jackson, and they were still able to have a run and win enough games to make the playoffs. And they nearly knocked off the Cincinnati Bengals. They nearly knocked off the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs without their quarterback, their MVP caliber quarterback, Lamar Jackson. This team, I think, is a sleeping Super Bowl contender. They have a lot of talent on offense and defense, and I really like their coaching staff on both sides of the football. I think that gives them an edge over a team like Pittsburgh, where I have confidence on defense, but not a lot of confidence on offense. I think the Ravens have made a lot of good moves this offseason to elevate themselves this year. Let's take a look at their strengths and their weaknesses for the season. So let's first, there it is. All right, wrong one. Hopefully I didn't spoil anything. Baltimore Ravens. Number 4 quarterback. I have Lamar inside my top 5 elite quarterbacks this year. I feel like when he's on his game, he brings something to the table that's so unique. His elusiveness, his quickness, his ability to make you miss in the pocket, his ability to extend plays, his ability to run, which forces a defense to game plan a specific way, opens up your running game. His passing and his accuracy, I think, is a lot better than anyone gives him credit for. He has a quick snap release. He can deliver the football all over and make all of the throws. And I think this year he finally has a receiving core that might be able to showcase that. The coaching rank, I have John Harbaugh at number 10. I've been a little bit lower on him as of late in recent seasons than I was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I felt like maybe he peaked, but he's just a good coach. I don't think he's like a great coach or anything, but I think over the long haul, he's proven to be a good coach. I don't think you would place him in the elite category, but he's consistently had success. The one thing I would say about Harbaugh as of late, he has very much struggled to win games without Lamar Jackson, and I think that maybe has lessened his rank, as well as the fact that I think he has been less adept to really evolve recently. Offensive line rank, I have a number 3, which might seem high, but I feel like the offensive line is really, really strong. I don't think they have any weaknesses. Morgan Moses had one of the best seasons of his career at right tackle. Ronnie Stanley at left tackle is one of the best in the game when he's healthy. I think Tyler Linderbaum's about to break out as one of the better centers in football. They have very solid guard play led by Kevin Zeitler, so Really good offensive line. They can run, they can pass block. They are always deep at that position in Baltimore. Offensive rank overall, I have at number 8, which is a little bit of a projection as they have not been a top 10 offense over the last year or two. But I think with the additions they've made, such as Odell Beckham, such as Zay Flowers, having Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, a good offensive line, a couple of running backs, they have enough to make this work along with the scheme change. They went to the man in Georgia, the offensive coordinator, in order to change this. And I feel like they're going to be a pass-happier team. They're going to be less run-focused. I think that's going to open up their offense and allow them to be more aggressive. And I feel like they're actually going to score a lot more points this year. And I think Lamar could have a huge season, his best season since the MVP year. The roster rank is number 7. I think they confidently have a top 10 roster in football. A lot of talent on defense, a lot of talent on offense. No real weaknesses other than maybe pass rush. You would argue secondary rank is number 6. They have a very strong secondary year in and year out over the years. And I think they play to their strengths in that secondary. Defensive line is weak, I would say. I don't think they have any superstars on the defensive line. I think they have a bunch of okay players. Matabuke stands out. You got Washington inside. Owe and Ojabo are young edge rushers. They added Jadeveon Clowney. These guys are fine players, but they're not really difference makers. The defense overall is a 13th ranked. I think they combine a really good scheme with really good secondary play, good linebacker play, and enough creativity up front to create some pressure. And that's why I have them as a little bit above average defensively. But I think they could easily be a top 10 unit at times this season. Moving on to the offensive depth chart, I think, again, I went through basically all these players. Going through some of the guys that I think are interesting this year. Zay Flowers is a rookie that I think could have a phenomenal year. I think he could be the breakout rookie receiver of the NFL this year. He is the rookie receiver that was number 1 in the draft for me. I also think that he has the clearest path of any rookie receiver to become the number 1 on his team, which is why I have them as the number 1. I think eventually he will be the number 1 receiver on this team. Rashad Bateman is interesting because he's coming off an injury-riddled season. He was also a former first-round pick. He's shown flashes in his past, but I'm not sure he can be consistent, which is why I'm glad they brought in Odell Beckham Jr., because I think he's going to be similar. I think Odell, at his age and at his ability now, I think he'll be solid, but I think he's going to have flashes where he looks like Odell of old, and he's going to have other moments where maybe he's a little bit disappearing. I question his ability to separate at this point in his career, but I think his hands are still unreal, elite. He is a very smart football player, and he understands how to run routes, how to get open, and then also how to high point the football. I think he's going to catch a lot of touchdowns. I could see him being the secondary option in the red zone to Mark Andrews, who I think Mark Andrews is going to benefit from the rest of these receivers coming in. I think Mark Andrews is going to be the guy. He's still going to be the alpha, but I think that there's just going to be more defenses spreading their attention elsewhere, which is going to open up Mark Andrews for bigger damage. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are interesting. Both have been injury-riddled in recent history. J.K. has the higher upside, but Gus Edwards seems to be the more consistent guy. Dobbins is more explosive. Edwards is more of a big bus. That's why they call him the Gus Bus Machine. So that is the Baltimore offense. Moving to the defensive side of the football, it's led by Roquan Smith in the middle, Marcus Williams in the back. You got Kyle Hamilton at the nickel position. And a lot of people believe that Kyle Hamilton is a safety. That is a myth. He actually plays a majority of his snaps at the nickel position. Played very well there last season. He was ranked as the number 1 safety in football according to PFF, but he's really a nickel player if you check the snaps. Marlon Humphrey is a top 10 corner without a doubt in football. Rocky Sin brings a solid number 2 to the table as long as he can stay healthy. They have pretty good depth at that position overall. Geno Stone's a little bit underrated in my opinion, and they'll mix in different corner personnel with different safety personnel. Like they might have Hamilton play in the box on early downs, or they might take Stone off the field for another corner, something of that nature. Patrick Queen had his best season of his young career last year. He is a great athlete that can fly around the football field, blitz. He is very inconsistent, though. Think of him like a Devin White. Very similar players. Roquan's one of the best linebackers in football. Really stabilized this defense last season. Then you have... Oh, I messed up on the defensive line. That is my bad, guys. I knew this was going to happen at least once. As you can see, that is the Browns defensive line. That is my bad, but I'll go through it myself. So you have on the defensive line, Washington, Matabuke on the inside, Clowney, and Oweh on the outside. And then you have Ajabo as well. Those are the main guys overall, I would say. I think Jones is in there as well. They lost Calais Campbell. Calais, the veteran, is no longer there. Michael Pierce is still there too, I believe. So Michael Pierce is going to be their big nose tackle who plays situationally. He's a pretty good run defender still, but doesn't bring anything to the pass game. Matabuke is kind of the opposite, although I'd say he's probably the guy with the most upside on the inside. And then I'm intrigued to see which one of these edge rushers steps up. It's not going to be Clowney. Like, Clowney's going to come in and he's going to be Jadeveon Clowney. He's going to be decent. A good athlete that can really defend the run and set the edge, but he's not a pure pass rusher, right? That's going to be the question. Can Oweh or Ajabo be the pass rusher when they need that? And I think that's really what's hurting this team from me saying they're an exceptional Super Bowl contender. If they had a real pass rusher, like maybe they'll get that at the trade deadline. That could also be potential for that to happen. But I think if they had one stud pass rusher, I'd feel a lot better about this team's Super Bowl chances. But right now, I've got the Baltimore Ravens at 11-6. My ceiling is 13-4. The floor is 8-9. And the over-under I've got at over 10.5 wins. 11-6 record prediction. I think they're gonna be around last year's record. A little bit better, I would say, just because I think Lamar is gonna play a full season this year. At least I hope so. And I think they have a better offense just overall. I think less is on the shoulders of Lamar to make magic happen. And I think he's gonna make that magic happen. The ceiling, 13-4. I think there's a chance they win this division this year. I think I would list them as the number 2 team with the highest chance to make to be the division winner. The floor is 8-9. The floor being that Lamar misses a good portion of the season again. The defense doesn't find a pass rush, and the offense doesn't hit its ceiling. So that's what I see for the Baltimore Ravens. Guys, if you're enjoying this live stream, don't forget to Gronk Spike the like button, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. We've got some viewers in here now, which I appreciate. Don't forget to Gronk Spike that like button, baby. And also, later on today, I'm probably just going to upload the AFC South preview. So make sure to check out the AFC South preview later. I'm going to stop this live after the AFC North, record the AFC South preview, and then I'm going to release that an hour or two after this video is over, okay? So make sure to check that out. Have your notification bell on and all that jazz. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Let me know your predictions. Shout out to Beezy, who's given his predictions in the chat. He has the Ravens with a floor of 9-8, a ceiling of 14-3, and a 11-6 record. Now leaning towards 12-5. Okay, awesome. All right, moving on to the next team. We have the Cleveland Brownies. The Cleveland Browns have super high expectations this year within Cleveland. So there's kind of 2 different approaches to Cleveland right now I've seen. One is Cleveland, inside Cleveland, expects a big season because everyone knows how talented they are. They have Deshaun Watson, who they paid all this money, and they brought in Zadarius Smith. They got a new defensive coordinator. They paid money to Dalvin Tomlinson, right? They've made all these moves, traded for Elijah Moore. The list goes on and on and on, and we'll talk about that as we get to the roster. This team is loaded. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of pressure on Kevin Stefanski to bring a winner to Cleveland this season. There's another perspective to Cleveland that is like, they're the Browns. Like, who knows? They could be good. They have a lot of talent, but they're going to disappoint because they're Cleveland. They're the Browns. And a lot of people looking at their history and saying, they're Cleveland. They're just going to be Cleveland again, and they're going to disappoint everybody. And I think a lot of people are looking at the Browns and saying, because last year was not very good, I think a lot of people are still leaning into what they were last year, but I have to promise you, this roster, this team is a lot different. And we'll even go through all the changes they've made to the personnel, to the team, to the schemes, in order to suggest that. But this is a team that, if this team did not have the name Cleveland Browns, did not have the logo, did not have the colors, did not have the history of Cleveland that I've seen over my life, I'd be a lot more confident in this team to do great things. Deshaun Watson is ultimately the biggest question. A lot of people still don't want to talk about him. They don't want to cheer him on, and I totally get that part. The thing with Deshaun Watson is, used to be an awesome quarterback. At one time was an elite quarterback in this league for the Houston Texans. He took a lot of time off football. He played last year. He was bad last year. And that creates such an enigma. That is the Cleveland Browns. If they get good Deshaun Watson, this team could be really darn good and one of the dark horses in the NFL. If they get what they got from Deshaun Watson last year, they could without a doubt finish last in this division. That's what makes the Browns probably the most confusing team in the NFL. Point blank, period. Let's take a look at the ranks for the Cleveland Browns. All right. So this is how I rank their team this year. 13th at quarterback. This was a little bit more, upside in terms of Cleveland. I felt like Deshaun Watson should be at least a little bit above average this year, right? Like, given his talent, his ability, what we've seen from him in the past, trying to balance out that he'll probably be a bit rusty still this year, and he's getting used to a new scheme, right? I think a lot of people overlook how much Bill O'Brien helped Deshaun Watson, and I think we're seeing that now as opposed to then. But I think Bill O'Brien crafted a perfect scheme and a perfect offense for his abilities and his backyard capabilities to run around and scramble and make plays with great arm strength and great mobility. And I think Cleveland is a lot more structured under Kevin Stefanski in their approach. They want to run the ball. They want to be a play-action team. They want to be under center. And Deshaun Watson has never really been that type of guy. He's more of a shotgun pistol type of guy. He wants to be able to look at the defense, and he wants to be able to play with a freedom. It's funny because I was watching the Johnny Football documentary yesterday, and that's kind of what Deshaun Watson reminds me a little bit of. Johnny Manziel in college. Like, he doesn't really want to deal with all this. He just wants to go out there and play football, man. So, at his best, he can be a top 10 quarterback. At his worst, we saw he could be a bottom 10 quarterback. Somewhere in the middle is where I rank him. Coach, number 22, Kevin Stefanski's had some really nice moments in the NFL. Really nice offensive moments especially. But he has struggled, in my opinion, to grasp the leadership of this team and really lead this team to where they want to go consistently. I think he's struggled with the hurdles that have come being the Browns coach. He started off extremely hot. I think he made the most of the Baker Mayfield situation, but I just feel like he has not been the consistent coach that this team needs, and I question his leadership. I like him from an offensive standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint, he leaves a little bit to be desired. Number 4 offensive line. They're an elite offensive line. You could argue they're a top 3 offensive line. I wouldn't really argue back. But they are definitely top 5. There's no doubt about it. And they're amazing run blocking. 11 offensive rank. I think they're going to have a pretty darn good offense this year. When you look at the personnel, which we'll get to here in a second, there's no excuses to not have a top 12 type of offense. And that's even considering that Deshaun Watson will be kind of like a little bit above average, but not special. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. A really good offensive line, an awesome running game. Maybe not the most creative drop back passing game, but still a good enough one. The roster rank I have at number 4. A really talented roster, man. And we're going to go through that in depth here, but they do not have basically any holes on this roster, and there are no excuses for this football team. Secondary rank I have at number 9. I think they have one of the most underrated secondaries in the NFL. Defensive line is at number 8, which is probably the biggest improvement on this football team. They have gotten so much better on the defensive line this offseason. It's actually crazy. They've added 3 players that will contribute a lot to this team. And the overall defensive rank is number 12. I think they will be a lot better on defense. And they added players that would suggest they should be a lot better on defense. But let's begin with the offensive side of the football. We talked a lot about Deshaun Watson. What is he working with this season? On offense, you've got an offensive line that is pretty much the same. It's actually exactly the same as last year, but it's pretty much the same as the last couple of years. The only real difference here is that Pocic is the center. He was the center last year, and he was very good last season for them, especially if you look at his PFF grade. The Wills, Bitonio, Teller, Conklin, those guys are all good players. I would say Bitonio and Teller are the best of the bunch. Both are elite guards. If you were ranking the right guard position, Teller would be inside the top 3. If you were ranking the left guard position, Bitonio might be number 1, but he's at least in the top 3. Conklin is a good right tackle, although a little inconsistent. Really good athletically. If he can stay healthy, he's a good player. Njoku is one of my favorite tight ends to watch in football. Super athletic, and I felt like he had his best season of his career last year. Good run blocker, good receiver, all that. The question for the depth, I would say in the skill positions, is the lack of running back depth. With Kareem Hunt gone, who I know wasn't the best last year, you just knew he was a stable guy. Nick Chubb behind him, if he goes down or if he misses any time or if he needs to spell, is Ford the guy to step up? Is Felton the guy to step up? Who's going to be the guy that's going to take the snaps from Chubb when he's a little tired, a little banged up? I think that is a question about the offense for sure. Wide receivers, Amari Cooper, still an awesome player. Top 20 receiver without a doubt in the NFL. Moore, a lot of people are higher on Elijah Moore than me. You know, I liked him initially coming out a little bit, but I always felt like he was more of a number 2, which is what he'll be in Cleveland. A lot of Jets fans kind of hyped him up to the moon. We'll see what he is. He's been getting a lot of promising reports out of camp. Seems to have good chemistry with Deshaun Watson. I think if he can just be a number 2 in the slot, in the middle of the field for Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson, that would be nice. Like, I'm not expecting him to go out and put up 1,000 yards. Donovan Peoples-Jones is more of a downfield target, and I think that really fits Deshaun Watson's game. Deshaun Watson was really good with a guy like Will Fuller, and Donovan Peoples-Jones may not be as good as Will Fuller at his peak or with that speed and that vertical ability. But Peoples-Jones had a really nice season last year, and a big-bodied guy that can run, can get down the field and make plays. I think it's a nice build to a wide receiver room. A small guy that can separate over the middle of the field and more, an all-around number 1 in Amari Cooper, and a vertical threat in Peoples-Jones along with Njoku. So that's the offense. I think it's going to be a top 12 unit this year. Defensively, this is the right defensive line this time. And again, I messed up. Damn it. I hate this. This is the problem with doing all of the things by yourself. I always mess at least a couple things up. But we've got Awuzie here, which is clearly not on the Cleveland Browns. He's a Cincinnati Bengal. That's my only mistake there, and that should say Denzel Ward. Other than that, everything else is good. So we got Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, recent signee Shelby Harris. Myles Garrett is a stud. This defensive line is super improved, and as you can see, 3 out of the 4 players are brand spanking new to this team. I expect Harris to be the starter, but the thing about Shelby Harris is that Shelby Harris does not play a lot. Like, Shelby Harris will play a rotation role. He'll play a rotation role, but I expect him to be more of the starter, if I guess you would put in some sort of capacity, over an Elliott who's still on the roster. Zadarius Smith is going to be a great number 2 to Myles Garrett's number 1. He had a great season last year. Awesome season. And he's great in that role. Myles Garrett could win Defensive Player of the Year this year. You've got Walker at linebacker back. You've got Delpit and Thornhill at safety. Thornhill looked great in that preseason game, getting a pick 6 on his former team. Emerson and Newsome, I think, are 2 really underrated corners. Emerson had a great year last year. I think he had like 20 plays on the ball, 20 pass breakups last season. Newsome, he can play inside or outside. I think he's going to primarily play in the slot. I've heard a little bit of noise that Denzel Ward might play there as well. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this defense is good, and I think the biggest reason I can count on it being good, more so than adding Dalvin Tomlinson and Zadarius Smith and Okoronkwo, I believe is how you pronounce his name, out of Houston, who's going to be a nice little off-the-bench rotation pass rusher. Rodney McLeod, a rotation safety as well, who had a nice year in Indianapolis last year. More than the personnel added, Jim Schwartz is so much better than what they had previously as the defensive mind and the defensive play caller. Schwartz is not a guy that's like super creative. He does like to blitz a lot, unless he was in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, he did tend to actually kind of like be a little less aggressive because he knew he had a great defensive line. And typically with Schwartz, he plays to his team's strengths, and that's what I like about him. He's really good with defensive lines. He showed that in Detroit when he had Ndamukong Suh, Nick Fairley, and those guys in Detroit. They were a top defense in his tenure there. Philadelphia, he won a Super Bowl with Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and that defense. And in Cleveland, I think he's going to maximize the personnel they have in the front. And I think he'll bring a little bit more creativity than what was previously there. A very generic, very vanilla, very much a Seattle scheme defense that I think was outdated, was not creative enough, was not game plan specific, and they really struggled to stop the run. I think Dalvin Tomlinson's going to help them stop the run. I think Zadarius Smith and the personnel changes will help stop the run. But I think also Schwartz will help them stop the run as well, just by being a little bit more attention to detail and not willing to give up such gashing big runs. A lot of teams, it felt like Cleveland and the Chargers were very similar in terms of if you can just run the ball last year, you can beat that team. Like the Chargers and the Browns were very similar in that capacity. So overall, my ranking and my prediction for the Cleveland Browns, I have them at 10-7 this season. I have the Browns making the playoffs as one of my 3 wild card teams. I have, as you will see, 3 teams from this division making the playoffs. Cleveland will be one of them. I really struggled here, guys, between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. I'm not going to lie, especially lately, because I've been hearing a lot of things about Deshaun Watson not playing well in camp. I watched him play a little bit against Kansas City, and I thought he showed some promise. Like, he looked better than last year. He made one really nice play to Amari Cooper. The ceiling, it could be out of this world. They could be one of the best teams in the NFL. They have all the talent to do it. They have an elite offensive line, an awesome defensive line. I think good enough coaching. They have a quarterback capable of elite play. They have a good receiving core, a great running game, a good secondary. They have all the talent to be an elite team. But I think Cleveland, being Cleveland, being in this division, I think they'll find a way to lose some that they shouldn't lose, win some that they shouldn't win, and go about 10-7, make the playoffs as a wild card. The floor is certainly there, though. They could be bad. As all Cleveland teams typically are, they could be a bad team. This year, they could fall apart. From an ego standpoint, Deshaun Watson leading the way as your quarterback, he's a little bit sensitive. His ego could certainly get in the way. And I just don't know if Kevin Stefanski could handle a lot of inner turmoil with this team if things go wrong. So, also, we've seen the defense underwhelm in recent years. That certainly could help. That certainly could happen again. So 6-11 is the floor. And then I am leaning towards the over, though, for their projection for the Cleveland Browns, 9-5. So that is the 3rd team in the AFC North. Hope you guys are enjoying this live stream so far. If you are, guys, please let me know. Gronk spike the like button. Let me know in the comments if you're enjoying my division preview so far. If you want me to add anything, if you want me to talk about anything in particular, let me know, guys. I would definitely appreciate the feedback. Moving on to the next team and the final team in the AFC North. It is the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals won this division last year. They went to the Super Bowl the year previous. They've gone to 2 straight AFC championships. I think it's safe to say their expectations is to at least get to the AFC championship, if not win the Super Bowl. And with Joe Burrow, I feel like, kind of have a feeling, that's going to be their expectations for a long, long time. I also think that this team has the personnel to get the job done. I feel like they have a better schedule, I would say, than a lot of the other teams. And that's kind of weird to say as a first place team. But yeah, it kind of feels that way when I looked at it, at least. And they just feel a lot safer than a team like Baltimore, who's dealt with injuries in recent years, a team like Cleveland. And they're a lot more proven than Pittsburgh at this rate in these incarnations. So Cincinnati is without a doubt projected to be a top 3 AFC team, and anything less than that would be a huge disappointment. And honestly, I think the only way Cincinnati would miss the playoffs is if Joe Burrow gets hurt. Now, they may not win this division, but I think they're close to a lock to make the playoffs. So let's take a look at their rankings going into the season. So, at number 2, quarterback, that is Joe Burrow, behind only Patrick Mahomes. He's been a top, I would say, 4 quarterback over the last 2 years. Coaching rank, number 11 for Zach Taylor. I think this year kind of just gave it an exclamation point in terms of his coaching. I think there was questions before. Is it Joe Burrow? Is it the talent? Is it Jamar Chase? What is it on this team? And I think Zach Taylor last year, the stability he shows. I gave him a good ranking this year. I have faith in Zach Taylor. His first couple of years were not very good. But he's grown as a coach, grown as a leader. And I will say this as well. His ability to morph his offense to the personnel has been very, very elite. The offensive line rank, I think, is a lot better now. And the thing I really like about the offensive line is the depth that they have. I think the offensive line should be a good unit this year. They have not been great over the last couple of years, especially the Super Bowl year. Last year, they had moments where they were awesome, and they had other moments where they were terrible, especially at the beginning of the year, they were really bad. The end of the year, they were kind of good, and then they got injured again, and that kind of like derailed them and all that stuff. But they add Orlando Brown to the offensive line. That should really secure that left tackle position, and I think they have great depth to withstand injuries as well, which I really, really like. The offense, number 3, I think they're going to pass the ball a ton this year. I think they're going to be one of the best passing offenses in football. Great receiver trio. You got Joe Burrow at the helm. I think they're really kind of finding out what style of play they are offensively, which is get in the gun, 11 personnel, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. That should be Joe Mixon a lot of the time. Joe Mixon back in the fold this year. I think he might have another good year, but maybe a little bit more production than he did last year. It felt like he was a little underwhelming from a running perspective. I think the offensive line will help him out in that regard. He is slowing down, though, I will say. He is not quite the Joe Mixon he was 2, 3, 4 years ago. That being said, getting back to the point of the offense. So they're an 11 personnel team, and they love to play in the shotgun, and they love to have Joe Burrow look at the defense, determine what he wants to do, stay very static, and in a lot of ways, it's very reminiscent of Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. He would just have great weapons, and then he would find his matchups, determine the coverage, and attack it. And Joe Burrow is one of those quarterbacks. If you show him what you're in pre-snap, you're toast. You have to be creative with your coverages, with the way that you show them, with the way that you rotate your safeties. If you're showing blitz, you've got to give him a lot of different things to think about because he's just that smart. The roster is a really good one. I think, honestly, out of all the elite teams in the NFL, it's probably the most underrated roster in the NFL from that standpoint. Secondary is very good. They do have questions at safety, which we'll get to. Defensive line, I think, is, again, super underrated. For whatever reason, the Bengals are an elite team, an elite roster, and they've proven that over the last 2 years. And it feels like, to me, maybe it's just me. You guys let me know. But it feels like they're underrated in a lot of areas. And their defense is top 10. I think Big Lou is one of the best defensive coordinators in football over the last couple of years. Getting to their offensive personnel, you've got the Cincinnati Bengals wide receiving core of Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. Nothing else has to be said there. They did draft one of my favorites, Charlie Jones, out of Purdue. He was a lot of fun to watch in the draft. So we'll see what he can do as maybe a number 4 receiver, but I don't expect him to play very much unless one of these 3 get hurt. Orlando Brown, I think, is the big addition, taking him from their primary competition of the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's now the blindside guy for Joe Burrow. If there is one weak point of the offensive line, I guess it would be Volson, who I think is a second-year player at guard. I think he was a second-round pick. He's probably the weakness on the offensive line. Ted Karras is really, really solid. Alex Kappa is a good, still pretty young player. Jonah Williams, and they still have Collins on the roster. They signed him last year, kind of was disappointing from Dallas last season, but Williams is expected to be the right tackle. Irv Smith is the tight end. Kind of bugging me. I don't think Irv Smith is very good, but I mean, this team did pretty good things with Hayden Hurst, who I also didn't think was that great. So we'll see what comes of that. I'm willing to give it a little bit of leeway there, but I feel like Hayden Hurst is a better player than Irv Smith. I was a little disappointed they weren't able to bring him back. Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon. The question behind Mixon is no more P. Ryan, so who's backing him up? Will it be the I think they brought in a rookie, right? I think it's Chase Brown, I want to say. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Williams is also potential guy. Chris Evans, I think, is still there as well. So who will be the backup for Joe Mixon? That's a question a little bit, but that's a top offense in the NFL thanks to the receiving core, an improved offensive line, and Joe Burrow. The defense, we've got, I think, one of the best linebacking duos in football. Did I mess anything up here? I got everything right, guys. Give me a round of applause on the graphic. I think it might be the second time in this video. Pratt and Wilson at linebacker, I think, is a dynamic duo at linebacker. Such a great duo. Love Logan Wilson's intelligence and ball skills. Jermaine Pratt is a great mover. He is great in coverage. And I think they're an awesome duo that don't get enough credit. And they really do a lot for this defense. I think that lessens the load of the safety position as well. The defensive line, Hubbard is a really solid player. I don't think he's like special or anything, but he does everything well. He's a solid pass rusher, a really good run defender, plays a ton of snaps. DJ Reader is an elite run defender and getting better as a pass rusher. BJ Hill is a really solid player. I also had him in my top 32 interior defensive linemen. He makes a lot of plays, man, in big moments. Trey Hendrickson is an absolute animal with a work rate that is unmatched. The cornerback situation, Hilton is an elite nickel corner. He didn't play great last year, but I'd still give him the benefit of the doubt. Really good against the run, great blitzer, super smart player. Awuzie comes back as their number 1 corner off of injury. He was really good for them last year when he played and good the year previous. Cam Taylor-Britt is a second-year player who I think is going to only improve and will be better than Eli Apple. I think the corner position is a lot better than it was last year. Remember, Awuzie was hurt, and they didn't have him. They also added DJ Turner from Michigan in the second round, who I'm a fan of. And then the safety position, you've got Nick Scott from the Rams, who I think is a solid starter in this league. Nothing special, though. And Daxton Hill could be the one that is special, replacing Jesse Bates, first-round player out of Michigan 2 years ago. A lot of question marks at the safety position, though. But otherwise, this defense is rock solid. And they have a ton of depth on the defensive line. They added Miles Murphy in the first round out of Clemson, who's a really talented pass rusher. They have a couple other guys that played well last year. So it'll be interesting to see how they mix and match in certain situations. Maybe in pure passing situations, they take Reader or Hill off the field in favor of Murphy, but we'll see. All right, so that's the defense and that's the offense. In terms of their record, I have the Bengals going 13-4 this year as the number 1 seed in the AFC. That's at least how I calculated it. I think they've got an awesome team, and I think they are going to be battle-tested entering the playoffs. They might start a little slow. Like, I think I had them losing the first game of the year against Cleveland. But I think they're going to eventually find their way and go on a run. I just love how their defense is game plan specific. They play to their players' strengths. They're always well prepared on offense and defense. They always rise to the occasion in big games. The coaching staff has proven that. They've got an elite quarterback. They've got elite skill talent. They have an improved offensive and defensive lines. I think they've improved their corner position. And overall, they have a lot of chemistry. And that speaks volumes for me. Ceiling is 14-3, so they're already close to their ceiling in my opinion. Floor is 9-8. With Joe Burrow, it's hard to get worse than that. I think they could still make the playoffs around a 9-8, 10-7 in a disappointing type of year. But that would have to do if the offensive line falls apart again. The defense underwhelms. They really miss Jesse Bates and Von Bell. And maybe Joe Burrow's a bit banged up. We've already kind of seen that in training camp. If I were a betting man, which I am, I would be betting the Bengals to go over 11 wins this year. So the AFC North standings, ultimately I have the Bengals winning the division and going number 1 seed in the AFC in the regular season, 13-4. And the ultimate deciding factor, we're going to get to the AFC West, a big game against the Kansas City Chiefs this year. The Baltimore Ravens, 11-6, will make the playoffs as a top wild card. I think I had them as the 5 seed, I think. I have the Cleveland Browns going 10-7 as the number 6 or 7 seed. I don't think I really confirmed either one, but I had a team in the AFC East being a wild card and also being a division winner as well. Pittsburgh Steelers, 9-8, just missing out. And really, I could flip the Steelers and Browns, and I would totally be cool with that. I just think the Browns are a much more talented team, and their window is right now. They have to make things happen. If they don't, it'd be super disappointing. So I have 3 teams in the AFC North. And in my opinion, the best division in the NFL this year. I have this division sending 3 teams to the playoffs, 1 team getting the bye, 2 teams being wild cards. And I think legitimately 3 teams out of this division could make the AFC Championship game. And I wouldn't be that surprised by it. I think, 2 of these teams could make the Super Bowl. I feel like the Bengals or the Ravens have the quality to make the Super Bowl this year if everything goes right for them and they play at their maximum potential. Things could break their way. So that's the AFC North, guys. Those are my predictions, my projections, my analysis for the AFC North. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown and this live stream for the AFC North Division Preview. If you did, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support me personally, don't forget to become a patron or a YouTube member. You'll be getting exclusive content, including my bets throughout the season and a lot more in the BLV Consensus podcast as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you soon in the AFC South preview, which, remember, not going to be live. It's going to be uploaded to the channel later today. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's Mitch. Peace.